No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart when it comes to leadership. And this is something that I've experienced many times in my career in retail leadership. And that's this idea that all things that are a problem come back to: how are you training your people? How are you coaching your people? How are you asking them to do things, more correctly? If the results aren't there, it's because you have to do this better or that better. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes that is absolutely true. But sometimes it's not true. And sometimes these questions are being asked by people who haven't walked in your shoes for a while or ever. And it's tough to have those conversations with them when they can't necessarily see eye to eye with you. Have you had this happen to you before?
Definitely, for sure. And I think that this is good because it's a smaller part of a larger conversation. I wrote about this a couple of weeks back on our LinkedIn newsletter around just kind of the myth of training, coaching, and focus. And again, does training help? Absolutely. Does development help? Yes, absolutely, 100%. We're not saying that that's not the case. What happens, though, many times is that you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, or this belief that it's always training, that we're not talking a little bit deeper. It's like, well, who is training and how are they training, and is the training effective? And then not only is there training done, but then what's the follow-up, and what's the process in which we're validating the training? And so much of that falls into the effectiveness of leaders. And so I think that there's been many, many times where I've been in conversations and dialogue, and we always want to kind of default to that, like, oh, it's like it's a training thing, or it's just like, and it's like, well, yes and no, because how many times do we have to train the same people on the thing we want them to do without finally saying it's not about the training? Maybe it's about the execution of the strategy. Maybe there's other factors that are here. And so I think it's just something that it's good for us to kind of for us to discuss, but also for leaders to constantly look at, because a lot of times the default for many strategies from many organizations is just simply that, oh, they need more training, under the assumption that they just don't have the training they need to do the work, and that there are other factors that I think can be a lot bigger in the impact of them not getting the work done how it should be done.
Right. Well, so let's talk about some of those other factors here, because a lot of it comes down to prioritization. And we talk about this as in our culture acronym. The L for culture is to lend air support. So if you're a leader, your job is to kind of filter out the noise and make sure that your team, that your people reporting up to you, don't have a list of 7,000 priorities. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority, right? That's how it works. There has to be something that is a priority, a couple of things, but not everything is a priority. And that can change, but it shouldn't change daily. It could change quarterly. It could change annually. Like, you're supposed to reevaluate what your priorities are based on moving levers of a business if things are not moving the way you want it to move. But if a priority is A, B, and C on Monday and it's D, E, and F on Tuesday, that implies that what you said on Monday wasn't actually a priority, and you lose credibility as a leader when it comes to naming off any priorities at all. And so you have to really be clear on what the priorities are. And you can't kind of be in, like, if you're being inundated by noise from outside the system, you often will have competing business groups kind of telling you what they believe their priorities are. And it's their top priority for sure, because it's their business group. You as the leader then have to go in and filter that and decide what is actually the priority. And there are things you can do to figure out what is actually the priority. Look at how people are rated on their annual reviews. Look at what constitutes someone getting a raise or a promotion or not. You want to know where the priority is? Look at what gets a person a promotion. It's what the old adage, ask a politician, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. This is the exact same thing. And so what I want to ask you, Lorenzo, is, have you ever run into a situation where you have to kind of push back on someone who has, who's trying to tell you this is a priority, and you have to kind of make it clear to them that this actually isn't a priority for you, not because it's not to them, but because it just isn't to you. And so I want to ask you that, but first I want to give up to one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, when did you have to kind of make sure that someone who is telling you something that's really important to them, it is a priority to them, that it just isn't a priority to you, without kind of hurting that relationship and saying, no, sorry, bud, go away and come back later. You have to maintain that relationship. You have to have a working relationship with them, but you really, it's not a priority to you. It just isn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of it sometimes, to your point earlier, is around negotiation, communication, relationships, those types of things. And I can think of many times when somebody has come to me to say, like, this is the thing, this is the priority, this is what needs to be focused on, and because of the work that I do, and because of the teams that I lead and the involvement in things that are going on, I many times have had different perspectives and said, like, I'm not saying it's not important, but when it comes to, like, what are we really trying to solve for here, or how does this align with the other things that we have? I think, and what I've learned over time, is to just continue to ask more questions to help to connect the dots on where does this land in the kind of the the list of all priorities, because we have to be honest enough to say that there are many, and we have to be honest enough to say that some are more important than others for different types of reasons. And again, when you have teams, where you have multiple leaders, you have complex businesses, you have different work areas of responsibility, you have all this type of stuff, there are going to be things that may be more of a priority to this group or to this leader specifically versus that leader or that group specifically. But then as the leader of leaders, you're kind of responsible for it all. So I share that because I think that's where I have, and that's typically where I push back, because it happens constantly. Where I'm like, okay, walk me through that. Walk me through that as a priority. Why is that a thing? I understand that we may be solving for scale or solving for a reduction in this behavior, but where maybe you're seeing that as a behavior that needs to change, I'm saying that behavior shows up differently for me here. Let me walk you through, and then to ask the questions around, okay, so, like, is this something that's more of a priority than this other thing? Because sometimes people are not even aware of, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, they're not aware that there are some other bigger priorities that are going on. Sometimes because they're so hyper-focused on the thing that they are trying to solve for, they're not even thinking about the other things that are also going on out there. So sometimes it is a matter of saying, like, okay, well, hold on. I hear what you're saying. This is something that you want me to focus on. Let me give you some other things right now that I'm also being asked to focus on. And I'd love to get your perspective. Like, where does that fit? Right? When it comes to this, and that, and then the thing that you've got, where does that fit in your mind? Because I want to understand the level of urgency that you're looking for versus the things that I've got going on. So let's talk through this. And I think in that type of conversation, and then that type of engagement, is very helpful in us finding a place where we can kind of negotiate down to, like, what is this thing? And maybe there's something in there that you just need. I've seen that a lot of times. Sometimes we have people that not only want to tell you what is important, but they want to tell you how to do it. And I think that's where it's like, well, look, if that's what you're telling me is important, if I can get you that, if that's the thing that you want solved, and that's the thing that you want to have positive growth in, if I can get you that, then do you really care how I get it done? And if the answer is like, well, no, I don't, then okay, great. Then let me focus on getting you what you're looking for, but let me do it the way that makes more sense for me in the context of the work that I'm doing with the team that I have focused on, so that I can, as you said earlier, like, lend air support. I can get rid of some of this extra noise and stop changing things so quickly when it comes to behavioral expectations.
Right. That should be the default. If you're a leader and you are, if a person is saying to you, I can get this done, ethically and within the guidelines of what the organization is, does it really have to be done the way you want it to be done? Oftentimes that kind of procedure, that way that they want it to be done, is rooted in a worst case scenario. It's the prescription to do for leaders who don't have the ability to get it done. It's the prescription. It's like if you have no ability to get something done, you got to start somewhere. Well, I don't know how to do it, so you're going to tell me how to do it, and then I can do it that way. That works. But if you are saying, you're telling me you want this done, I know how to get this done. It's not the way you want it done, but I can still get it done. If that's a problem for you, that implies that you're kind of your kind of devotion is not to the actual thing you're saying it is, but rather it's to the process. And then it's a different conversation. So if you want to talk about that, we can have that conversation. But this kind of like a one size fits all doesn't really work. It's good to have that procedure in place for people who don't have the ability to do it. But if you as a leader are saying, I can get this done, you should be allowed to at least make the attempt. You should be allowed to say, I can deliver on this if it's a priority. And if I can show you the movement in this area, then leave me alone. Then I should be able to say, I did this the way I wanted to do it. I think a lot of the reasons people have a problem with people pushing back on that is because they don't want to feel like they weren't part of the solution. That if they can get the delivery on the number, but it wasn't the way they wanted it done, then they didn't have any influence over it getting done. They can't own that success at all on their own. I wrote the process to get this done. Look, they were able to get it done. It's like, no, you just conveyed to them what the priority was. They got it done in a way that's completely different than you. Now you feel kind of removed from that conversation. That's really tough for a lot of people to do, but it's all rooted in ego. And so if you're having a conversation with somebody, it's important to have the conversation in the context of what is this definition? Are we what's important? Is the result important or is the how important? Let's come to an agreement on that first, then we can have the conversation about how to move forward.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.